Hey everyone, welcome to the Just Pick Something podcast where we discuss movies, TV shows, and time codes will be in the description as usual. And to segue into Love and Thunder, talk about throwback aesthetic styles.
Yep, that definitely has that aesthetic attached to it.
Yeah. All right.
It's very much my way of discuss. So we're talking about the aesthetic real quick.
Yeah.
I've described it as the movie is exactly the type of van you expect to see the poster on in every sense. It looks as cool as the poster does. You think, wow, that is really dope. Then you see the guy driving it, you see how it runs, and you see the inside, and you're like, never mind.
Well, to go into it real quick, a quick information intro for this movie. Thor 4, Love and Thunder, 2022 Marvel film. Quick summary. Thor attempts to find inner peace, but must return to action and recruit Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, Korg, played by Taika Waititi, and Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, who is now, spoiler alert, the mighty Thor, to stop Gore the God Butcher, Christian Bale, from eliminating all the gods. It's directed by Taika Waititi. It stars Chris Hemsworth. And at the time of recording this episode, it is currently in theaters and will eventually hit Disney Plus because that's where all the Marvel movies go nowadays. But yeah, all right. So we've been alluding to discussing this episode earlier in our conversations. So
do you like this movie? Yes or no?
I like this movie. I liked it coming out, and I still kind of like this movie. It's far from perfect, but I still enjoy this movie.
In typical Franco fashion, I did not like this movie.
God, I knew that was coming.
I mean, I'll let you know, but in unusual Franco fashion, I'll let you handle most of the discussion in regard to this because I don't want to just that's not. Look, I get it. My character trait is Anthony Franco hate Marvel films,
and yeah.
Look, I was trying to tell someone this the other day. Someone was like, "Oh, if you didn't like that movie, you just hate Joy." And I was like, first off, RRR is a movie. I love Joy.
Yeah.
Second off, not that I hate Joy, it's I hate this movie. and
let me just add that to my running tally of Marvel movies Franco hates from Phase 4.
What is that? Full card of just hates them? No, it's not. That's actually not true at all.
Yeah. I nearly have bingo on this. Almost have that bingo. All I'm waiting for is the next Black Panther movie coming out later this year. We'll see if that completes my bingo.
Oh my God, it will. I've already heard. No, you know what? If Namor and the very clearly Aztec Atlanteans are as cool as they look, then I'll be happy.
Oh man, don't let me down. Don't let me down. I want a really cool depiction of Aztec culture in movies. Please don't let me down on that.
I'll get it. I would get into that rant a little later too, but I'm not going to do that. But look, I don't hate Joy. I very much enjoy movies. I always tell people that it's not that I don't like movies, it's that the movies that you like are garbage. But that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy them, and I won't say that you can't enjoy them.
Yeah. Okay, so I like this movie. It's not I know I have the track record of liking most Marvel movies, but I don't think they're all bad, but there are some that are just really not good movies, even if there are Marvel movies. I wasn't a big fan of the Eternals. I was not a big fan of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Spider-Man, it was fine. I thought it had some good moments. I don't think the multiverse is being explored as well as it could be, especially when you compare it to another amazing movie that came out this year, Everything and Everywhere All at Once, that handled multiverse exploration incredibly well compared to Marvel movies. It just feels like, before we completely start talking about this movie in spoiler territory, Marvel Phase 4, when we were coming into this after the Infinity War saga, after Thanos died, after they brought everyone back from the snap or the blip, whatever you want to call it, right? It was this feeling of oh man, where are the Marvel movies going to go now? Are they going to get really cool and experimental? Are they going to change things up? What is going to come from this next era? And I think at this point, for me personally, it's a lot of the same. Not really that much exploration of interesting ideas. Just a lot of samey movies with samey action, humor, and average plot lines, you know? And that might be a little hard, but I want these movies to be on the caliber of writing that some of the comics are. I think there's a lot of wasted potential in adapting these movies for what feels like a general audience that just appeals to everything and does nothing of substance with the material it's drawing inspiration from. And specifically in this movie, as much as I did enjoy a lot of it, I don't know if Gore was even the right villain to choose for this movie because he works so well as a multi-story villain with a lot of interesting ideas and complexity to it that was kind of reduced to just a meh of an antagonist and kind of wasted Christian Bale's potential as a prominent villain in this franchise.
Yeah, so to talk on the Phase 4 bit a little bit, I've seen a lot of people give the reasoning that, hey, look, Phase 4 is like Phase 1. In the sense that we're rebuilding, we're restarting a thing that's a new saga. We gotta wait, a couple movies before we get there. But my thing with so far with Phase 4 is that like it feels listless, like unfocused.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that we are moving towards something is there. It's like fine, cool. We'll get to, we'll meet Kang in Quantumania or whatever. We'll see, this character, that character. We'll see Clea or whatever in another movie. I'm sure, they'll use the Miss Marvel and the Marvels. We're clearly building a universe here that's gonna keep on moving, but it doesn't feel like any of it right now is worth it. None of the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah. I mean,
And it doesn't seem like they're using every tool in their belt to do it. It feels like they haven't let go of the formula, despite the fact that they do have people like Taika Waititi, they do have people like Chloe Zhao, they do have people like James Gunn, and like Sam Raimi. We have our tour level filmmakers that I feel like aren't actually giving products that you would expect from them.
It feels like they're being handicapped by the Marvel studio system.
Yeah.
And I know that was an initial complaint about some of the movies before the Infinity Saga ended, like Edgar Wright's departure from Ant-Man over creative differences. But I mean, why not just experiment with this era? It isn't like we are in the initial stages of Marvel movies where we haven't had a series of entertaining Marvel movies before. We're in like a lot of movies that have come out since. So we have way too much stuff to compare it to. And now we have TV shows and movies and very entertaining mixing of different actors coming into different properties from those movies and TV shows. Why not change it up? And instead, you just get semi-decent adaptation of something and more just set up for the next thing. People complain quite heavily of Age of Ultron having just a lot of setup in the initial plots of that movie. And I would say Marvel Phase 4 is mainly doing that with every single property now,
Yeah, it doesn't feel like any of it warrants its existence.
Yeah.
Right? I think, like, people would be like, oh, but, like, I loved Spider-Man No Way Home. And one, I'll disagree with you. But two, like, to me, it's like, yeah, but so? What does it mean in the grander scheme of things? Oh, but, Secret Wars, and that means we can have anybody come back. And it's like, but does that warrant the story that we had?
Yeah.
Does that finish the first two movies in like a cohesive, interesting way, or is it just more of the Marvel thing,
Yeah, and now if those characters you love or those storylines get adapted, what's the chance of it being what it could be? Like specifically to go to this movie, right?
Yes.
Thor the God Butcher storyline in the comics is awesome. I love the idea of a character being disillusioned by gods in the Marvel universe and seeking to destroy all of them. And a big plot point from the comics is that Thor realizes that Gore's right. Gods aren't worthy. They're not worthy of their status. And it creates this internal conflict with him, right? And that's super interesting. In this movie, it's not what they're going for. I get it. Like, okay, after my initial ideas of this movie were gone, I was like, okay, this movie is clearly going for something, going for a contained story in like a hour and 30 so minutes. It's going to be about the ideas of love and, relationships. And I get all of that. And it's just kind of like, if only you could change certain things. And it's still entertaining to me But yeah, it's just even accepting that this isn't going to be what I thought it could be or should be, it still feels like they could have been just ever so slightly more.
Yeah, so I was talking to someone the day after I had watched this film, and I was like, when I walked into the movie, right, because I had already heard some of the initial stuff, I was like, look, people always say I have high expectations of these films, or like they're like, oh, don't expect a lot of things, and I'm like, look, I'm not expecting anything from this film walking into it. And I'm not saying that because I'm not expecting it to be good or like I'm expecting it to be terrible or whatever. It's more what I have been promised has been an 80s movies poster and Taika Waititi as director. And with those two things, I can look back and be like, okay, Taika Waititi, What We Do in the Shadows, Jojo Rabbit. I don't like Thor Ragnarok, but like for entirely different reasons. But like Thor Ragnarok, like I can expect a certain level of craft from Taika Waititi as a film director. And that's all I expected from this film. And I walked into it and I started watching it and I was like, I didn't even get that. And I was telling someone, I was like, look, I want my discussion about this to not come across the fact that I hate this movie because I'm mad at it. I dislike this movie because I'm disappointed in it. I think that, yeah, like you said, Gore is a character that presents and is so many different things in his run that I don't need it to be exactly like that, but I need you to like use it.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually care about what this story means and like what you can do with it. And I know Taika Waititi can do that. I know Taika Waititi has the emotional capability in his films to explore something like a man in grief and anger lashing out at the authorities above and it feeling like this pointless battle and one of the people having to deal with like the realization that may be right. And then on top of it, you're also like regardless if you find it funny or not, if you find this hilarious, that's fine. I don't, but if comedy is subjective, so obviously like I can like it and you can't, and that's, but like taking away from that, even great comedy films understand that you can still have a good plot with them or good stories. And this movie is like, hey, we're also going to throw in Mighty Thor, and we're going to entirely waste the emotional weight of that as well. And it's not, again, you can find it hilarious. That's fine. It can be funny at times, but I also want the story to back it up. I want that story to be interesting and captivating the way that I know it can be, even if you don't follow the comic. Because people were like, you're a comic purist. You want Gore to have a tentacle head and look like Voldemort. And I'm like, I don't care if Gore looks like that. If I get scenes like the only scene that I will be like Gore really shines is the scene where he's like Pennywise talking to the kids.
Oh, really? See, for me, the scene that he absolutely shines is the entire opening of the movie.
Oh, he's really good there too.
Yeah, I actually didn't like that scene with Pennywise like performance too much. I did like Gore, but for me, that wasn't my favorite scene. I actually didn't like it all too much.
I mostly liked it because I kind of at that point had resigned the movie to being like 80s kids movie that's not good. And they were like, Gore has a puppet head and he's scaring children.
Oh.
And I'm like, traumatize them, please.
Yeah, no, it was funny and entertaining, but as a moment for the character, I felt a little like,
oh yeah, no, it felt like it's cheap ultimately.
Yeah.
If I think they've come out and said that like their kids were heavily involved in how they produced it, and they were like, it's for my children.
Yeah, which is great. I love that. Yeah, but you can have introspective themes and explorations and also be fun for kids.
Yeah, it can be. I've seen it. I don't like Thor Ragnarok. I think that movie does a lot more of that stuff than this one does. This movie, I feel like, is like really indicative of pretty much everything we've been talking about with Phase 4, where it's like, it's a movie that I feel like is just like the Marvel formula to a T, but like the modern Marvel formula, like there was a point where the Marvel formula was like, if there's a pre-Guardians Marvel formula and then a post-Guardians Marvel formula.
Oh, talk about Guardians influencing just movie trailers and other movie productions for like years, and then they dialed it back a little bit.
Yeah, and then this movie was very much like the post Guardians Marvel formula, where it's like they knew the humor worked, they knew the designs and like costuming and like lighting and like effects, all those things like were like working, and they were like, let's do it for Thor, which is why I don't like Ragnarok a ton, is because they were like, we Guardians it up and it will work better for audiences. But then this movie was like doubled down even more on it, and it's like, I don't think that you guys got the right lessons from those movies, to the point where Thor has always had really like plasticky fake costumes.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's always had like a plastic like shiny suits, and but like this movie, for some reason I was just like, why does his suit like look like it belongs on a Marvel theme park?
Yeah, it was very much, he looked like an actual action figure on screen.
Yes, and like it works with like, if I guess that's actually the aesthetic you're going for, but like it was like I kept on looking at it and being like, it doesn't tell me anything about this guy.
Yeah.
And I like good costuming. Good costuming tells you a lot about what's going on with the character. And, speaking of, going back to the last movie we were talking about, we have a character who's in RR. There's a character who starts off pristine and well combed and looks like the best of any man that you've ever wanted to see, and then he ends the movie in like a traditional Indian wear and dressed like a god that like is half naked and is wearing robes.
Yeah,
It's like you went from like pristine and perfect to like more an homage to the culture of his homeland.
yeah, it's kind of like costuming can be a theme, costuming can serve a theme and relate to the plot and function of the movie.
And with this one, it's like I felt like that was empty. It was just like it just served the aesthetic.
Yeah. So initially, I said I like this movie, and I spent, I think, the first part of this discussion saying like why I was like frustrated and was kind of annoyed by this movie. But the reason
you like this movie,
yeah, but the reason I say I like this movie, because I think there's a lot here to like, and to me, it's probably the best Phase 4 Marvel movie that's come out so far. I think,
and I understand that you like the screaming goats meme.
oh,
but
that's definitely my sense of humor. I love that.
Yeah. I know that. Look, I know every episode that you try to sneak it in there.
Yeah, and you have to just convince me to edit it out. And
yeah, it's always when I say something about how Marvel sucks, you're always like, meh, and I'm like, okay, God, I get it.
You don't even know how many I'm going to add to the subtle background of noise of this podcast episode. People are going to have an ear out. They're going to listen for it. They're going to be like, hey, is that the
I will say I don't know how well that 18-time joke worked for you.
Mm-hmm.
It worked for me a singular time in that movie, and it's when they're going to like the Shadow Realm to fight Yugimoto, and they crash into the planet, and I was like, and then they scream, and I laughed. I laughed because I thought that they went head first. The goats went head first into the planet, and then the boat hit them.
Yeah.
And that's why they screamed. I was like, that was hilarious.
Yeah, okay, it's a dumb joke. It's like 10 years old or however long it's been since that initial viral video came out. I just love that stupid meme so much. So it's so...
Oh, so you love
I genuinely liked when they showed up in the movie. And I was like, no way, they're actually doing this stupid meme from like 10 years ago. Sure, okay, wow. I guess putting this kind of humor in for kids makes a lot of sense. But man, I just love a dumb screaming goat. I
feel like that's like the Fortnite dances of memes though at that point.
Oh yeah. Don't get me wrong. I know it's a really bad opinion about like humor and stuff, but it's just a weak point of me, man. Like
Fair.
After like 100 times, it probably will get annoying, but there'll be a little part of me that's like, classic. Yeah. So another thing I think this movie does really well, besides some like creative aspects to it, is compared to other Phase 4 movies, right? I really like the playing of color, film techniques and stuff. It was really interesting the way they actually went to the Shadow Realm and decided to take all the color out of those scenes and only bring it back up when you got to see the interaction of like the magical weapons they would carry. They would light up moments and you would see the actual color come back into the scene around their hammers and stuff. I thought that was really cool. I wish other Marvel movies played with color and like setting or theme like this movie did, right?
Oh.
I loved the look and the landscape of the Olympic planets, or the planet with all the gods and stuff. I wish other Marvel movies movies would play around with like the mystical and the fantastical nature. Guardians of the Galaxy did that a lot, and I think some of maybe initially people had the idea that this was going to be very like Guardians of the Galaxy prominent like aesthetic to it, which I wouldn't blame you from the all the trailers and stuff, but I still really appreciated the visiting of other worlds and all the creative cultures they had and the aliens designs and the architecture of some of the planets. It's just kind of like I wish they had done more with it, but I really still enjoyed that.
Yeah. I think it's funny you had mentioned our review that like like the part with the dance sequence where you're like, I can see they did some visual effect here and like it took you out for a second.
Mhm.
Right? When they went to the Shadow Realm, my entire brain went, they're doing this to save on CGI. They're doing this because they have nothing and they know they can hide so much with color tone. Because it literally, okay, first off, the editing in this movie is terrible.
Real quick, I mean, you're definitely potentially right about that. They tried or may have done that to save time or cost or money or CGI effort, but I like that they took that chance.
But like it was one of the things where it went so like the editing's bad where they like randomly end up in like a tent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, where are we? And it's like you're in a tent. It's probably bright blue, bright green, and you guys got it like a Walmart. and like they're like, oh, we're gonna walk through here. And it's like the plastic that you find in like a warehouse.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys are literally in a cheap Halloween scary house. There's like literal pieces of metal on the ground and that like he drew on. And it's like, where did he get this metal from? Why is it like this? I can see the textures.
Yeah.
I know that this is a tarp from the dollar.
Well, he got it from the Shadow Realm, man.
He got it from the Shadow Realm. And I'm like, what like why are you guys selling this? Like it's like a genuine like this works. And I just kind of was like, I guess this is why it's black and white, because they know that what's it called? Oh man, the reference that I have in my head. Did you watch Arthur growing up?
I did a little bit, It's hard for me to remember how much of Arthur I watched from when I was like 5 or 6 or however old I was when I watched Arthur, but I have enough vague memories of me actually watching it that I could say, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so there's an episode where one of the characters is like they're like really into like the Harry Potter of that universe, right? And they have a friend who's blind. And they're like, oh, we're gonna set up like a play date and I'm gonna like dress everything up and it's gonna be really cool. But then she's like, I don't have suede blankets, and like she has like these polka dot like really gaudy blankets, and like all the stuff she's using is really cheap, but like the idea being like the blind girl's gonna like care that it's like not the same thing, and it's like, oh, who cares, it's just, it's the thought that counts. And I'm just thinking about the fact that it's like, yeah, no, it's exactly that, where it's like turn off the lights and you just, you know what, it's a spooky cave, it's okay that it's made of tarps, it's a spooky cave. And like I like one end of me is like, this is terrible, because like it's clearly super cheap, and like have the fight scene there. I think don't get me started on the fight scenes. They have the fight scene there, and I'm like, yeah, I can see the CGI puppet that you have for Jane being flung around and that.
It really wasn't that many fight scenes. I think a thing that I've seen about this movie is that a lot of moments in this movie is just people in a room talk to each other, or people in area talk to each other.
I mean, that's fine. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
I like movies with people just talking. We watch The Farewell. That's only people talking.
Yeah.
Those are good movies. But like for me, like, yeah. But visually, I mean, like, I like the idea, like you're talking about, like of it going pure black and white, and then just having the lightning bolt and Mjolnir and Stormbreaker like highlight it once in a while.
Yeah, and I really like the play on like scale, on them being on what looked like a big planet, and then as a gag it turns out to be a small one, and those goats and boat crash into it, and then the way they were running on the planet with a giant shadow monster chasing them. I thought that was really creative, and I'm glad they just tried things, even though, like you said, it doesn't always work sometimes, but I like appreciate the try.
Yeah, I respect the attempt at the very least. I think the worst execution that I've seen from a Marvel film in their attempts at doing things. I think the ideas are good. I think they present really cool visuals, ideally, but like I don't think Taika has a handle on action. If I'm going to focus on that for a second, because his editing for action and the way that he frames action in this film is really messy and a lot of the times incoherent in regards to like following the flow of a fight.
Yeah.
And earlier in this talk, I talked about the Sea Beast. I think that movie has great flow of action, very engaging. And in this film, it's more of the Taken. Have you ever seen like the people talk about Taken and how bad their like action sequences are choreographed? It's like 17 have to do one thing.
Yeah, I think there's that notorious cut from Taken 3 where it takes, I don't know, 24 cuts for him to jump over a fence.
Yeah, and so that's how I feel with these action sequences where I'm like, you don't focus on any of these cool concepts for long enough or do any of these cool visuals or like just take a moment for any of it the way that I thought Thor Ragnarok did. And I'm like, maybe he wasn't in charge of the action in Thor Ragnarok,
Yeah.
which a lot of, that's when people talk about like the behind the scenes for Marvel, they talk about how like a lot of the movies have the previs done for them, right? So like maybe he was just handed the previs for Ragnarok and then did it with like his writing and style, right, of storytelling involved, right?
Yeah.
But this film, I was like, they have the final fight. The final fight is him giving like 30 kids the power of Thor and then him cutting between each of those individual 30 kids doing uniquely different things in entirely different parts of a room. And I'm like, this doesn't work on like a technical level.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of this was due to COVID, in filmmaking, because like,
well, that also sucks.
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. A lot of these things they've just been complicated by COVID restrictions and COVID shooting. And you could do your best and just try it. And sometimes it just doesn't work out, and it's fine.
Yeah, sometimes you get the Batman and then sometimes you get Thor Love and Thunder.
Yeah. So to continue to speak about like why I still enjoy
you
this movie,
like it. Sorry, I keep on trying to harp on it.
Well, it wouldn't be as interesting if I didn't like talk about why I initially said I like this movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I like the way they played with that idea of the planets and the black and white and the scale. That was really cool. I also love the opening sequence. Christian Bale's whole journey, disillusionment of gods and stuff, was really well done. I just wish, I know they chose this specifically for it to be relevant and tie the story together, where he's confronting his gods. The gods are kind of just like laughing and just making light of his whole like sacrifice and the death of his daughter and the collapse of his people. And like, I thought all that was great. I saw what they were going for. I get it. Because of the story this movie decided to do, I completely understand why they made the sword kind of corrupt him and make him kind of, oh, the sword's influence on him is driving him crazy and it's making him kill all these gods and is going on this rampage of killing all the gods. I get it, because the end of this movie wouldn't work without that.
Yes.
I just wish they didn't do that and just let him be like, oh, you know what? The gods deserve to die because they aren't worthy of the people's worship. And he just kills them anyways. No corrupting influence. It's all just him. And then as he's killing these gods, his storyline could have been a little bit more interesting for me if they just gave his purpose a different approach. It was still awesome. I loved seeing Christian Bale just ham it up in his scenes. It's just kind of like, I have to separate the idea that I would have liked maybe to have seen this as a drama with some comedy versus the comedic film this movie is,
Yes. So I agree with you. And I've tried, like, I want to be clear that I'm not judging this based off of, I don't judge this movie based off of what I wanted to see from it. I judge it based off of what I think the movie gave me. Because like some people will be like, oh, all the things that you want you didn't get, so you had too high expectations. So I was like, well, I had no expectations for what Gore was going to be. I had no idea what I was getting, right?
I mean, even if you had expectations, it's okay to have expectations going into a movie, like it's just a normal thing to experience when you're excited about a movie.
Yeah, I was excited about this movie. I told people specifically this. I was excited for the movie when the first teaser trailer dropped. It painted a very specific tone.
Yeah.
This film that I was super interested in. It was like an introspective look at Thor's journey. Like, he's been through so much. Like, he's gonna have the very emotional, serious movie that peppered with comedy that I've been wanting from this this character because he's gone through so much.
Especially coming after the events of Infinity War.
Yeah.
This is the first time we're going to get to see a post Infinity War Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy members, and just other people involved in those events. But after that, those events that we haven't gotten a chance to see much of yet, you know?
Yeah, it's like his character has gone through so much from his introduction in Thor 1 to now, and we're going to bring back this character who was deeply intertwined with him in the first two movies. We're going to have a villain who's deeply entwined with the idea of him being a god, and it's going to be like this really emotional, personal film for Thor that's going to be funny and really well done because, again, I'm expecting Taika Waititi level film here. And what I got, I was like, man, like, and then, I saw the trailer. I was like, this is going to be great. I'm super excited for this movie. And then the second trailer, the actual, like, official trailer dropped, right?
Yeah.
And people were like, and it was like funny and like goofy and silly and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, I was expecting the teaser trailer. This is the official trailer. I really hope that the teaser trailer is going to be what it is because I want it to be full of like this heart that I'm ready for.
Yeah.
And then the second trailer dropped and it was more of the official trailer.
Yeah.
And then a third trailer dropped, it was more of the official trailer. And it was like, this is great. I'm so happy. This is so good. It looks great. It's like what I wanted. I was really like, people were saying that like I didn't like the teaser trailer, and I was like, I'm the exact opposite. And if we're gonna get a movie that's like these trailers, I'm not gonna like it. It was so I liked when the movie started and Gore was like having the moment with his daughter. I'm a big softie. I have two children, so like that's gonna hit me in a certain way, you know. And I'm watching it and I'm seeing, and I was really hoping that the Necro Sword thing was, it wasn't gonna corrupt him because there's so much good material of just of it not corrupting him and him being like, no, it's not corrupt. I am that angry about this.
Yeah, and
like. And he's rightfully angry about it.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like, I know what this movie was going for, right? And I kind of wish they would have been like, Gore is going to kill all the gods, and we get to see some of the gods he kills, or like this kind of conflict when the people of a planet that worship a god that's actually beneficial or like good gets murdered, and there's just like this evidence of Gore being unjust in his like crusade to kill every god, right? And I wish we got to see that, but we don't. And so it's like, oh well. I get that part of that corruption is just a reason that also allows Thor to not like have too much self-questioning, because the whole point of this movie is for his arc to be like, I'm already self-questioning my like self, and I need to find inner peace or a thing that fulfills me. And if you introduce a character that makes him further question his own identity, then the movie doesn't really wrap up, which is a shame. But I have heard the complaint that some of the Marvel movies feels like they come up with the ending and work their way backwards, right? I can see that about this movie. I like the idea of Thor having a child to take care of. I just don't know how much that's going to be a thing in the other movies, because even speaking to Ragnarok, it was a really cool and pivotal moment when Thor lost his eye and was affected by the events, right? And it just never comes up anymore.
Nope.
Yeah. So like, who's to say that the impact of this movie and the ending where he has a child even going to be important after it?
That was with this movie, right? I was saying that like I was really hoping for a movie that was like a wrap up of his character, not necessarily because I wanted him gone, but because I think he deserved that as a character. My main thing was, and it sucks because this movie does it, is that every movie it feels like whoever's making it just decides what they want to do with Thor, rather than like looks at Thor as a character that would do right? Like it's okay, we need Thanos to be killed. Who would have kill Thanos? Okay, we're gonna have Thor do it. It's like, would he have, like, was that his reaction? Would that reaction make sense in like a story way, or is it like we came up with that idea and then we figured out how to get there? Right, like you said, which I think that's a bad example, because I think Thor probably would have done it because he was like, I'm tired of this and that's my fault. But it very much felt like what they did with him in Endgame was, we don't really know what to do with Thor, but we'll do this with him. And what they did in Infinity War, like, we don't really know what to do with him in after Ragnarok, so we'll do this with him. Ragnarok was like, we don't know what to do with him after Dark World, so we'll do this with him. We don't know what to do with him after the first one, so we did this in Dark World. We don't know what to do with him in Avengers. Yada yada. Every movie is literally like, we don't know what to do with what you gave us, so we're just gonna reset him wherever we want. And this movie was like, I was watching this movie and there were literally points where I was like, is this Thor even worthy of holding Mjolnir anymore?
And the thing, to like speak about something I like from the other inclusions of Thor in other movies, right? In Infinity War specifically, right? I like the idea that even though he was at his lowest, you could be like overweight or depressed or all these different factors that make you feel worthless. He
Yeah.
still was worthy because he's fundamentally a worthy character of Mjolnir and other weapon he chooses to wield, right? And in this movie, it feels like because of the events, but you really can't have Gore raise those questions in this character to complete this storyline that they want to go for in this movie. Because in the beginning of this movie, we get to see him traveling in the universe, saving people, not perfectly well, and some of the humor comes from him adequate-ish savior of certain planets and civilizations, but like ultimately compared to the gods that they present in this movie, Thor is worthy because he directly tries to help out people, like he is trying to his best to help and save as much people as he can in comparison to the other gods in this
Yeah,
movie.
but my issue there is like the way that he acts in the opening sequence is a Thor 1 way of acting.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like Odin, if he would have done what he did at the beginning of Guardians of this movie with the Guardians, and then went back to Asgard, and Odin was like, "Yo, I just saw what you did." Odin would be like, "Yo, you're not worthy. I'm taking away your hammer. We're throwing it to Earth." Doing the whole first movie again after the events of the first the first 10 minutes.
Right.
And so I'm watching it, and I'm like, this isn't working for me as a character. From a character's perspective for Thor,
Yeah.
I don't think that he's here.
Oh yeah, okay.
And so that's why I was like, you know what? Like it was, I can understand enjoying the jokes and the aesthetic and doing like a lot of the fun stuff that they do. But like, yeah, for me, it doesn't go to that. Like it's not that the humor doesn't land. It's not that I hate fun. It's that like there's like a deeper like filmmaking side of it that like makes me not like
Well,
it.
yeah, and like for anyone listening to this, it's like I think sometimes like you can criticize something that you love,
Yeah.
and like it's fine, and you can say you like a movie like I have and still have numerous complaints about it,
Yeah, it's like the things that, and I also want to like talk about like briefly when people, because like I'm sure people will like look at what I say and be like, oh, he's like being like a critic, and critics have like this like overly demeaning view on film, and why don't you just enjoy stuff? And it's like, I think people need to understand that like just like them, people like what they like and look for that in film.
Yeah, I mean, people experience different films differently, which is why there are like,
Yeah.
400 movie podcasts like ours.
Yeah, exactly. It's like me and you are different. Like a lot of the things that will deter me from a movie, you'll be like, yeah, that's fine. Like it was not good, but like it's not gonna stop me from liking it.
Yeah, exactly, like the screaming goats.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm not gonna say like again, the humor is not gonna turn me off from a film,
Mhm.
but it's like, okay, like you're okay with how this like again we talk about the Shadow Realm part. Like you think the Shadow Realm aesthetic was really cool and it's done really well and it's
Mhm.
interesting. And I'm like, I'm seeing the things that you saw with RRR with the floaty head thing, and I'm seeing, cheap sets that they're
Mhm.
trying to hide with VFX.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's like sometimes things are weighted differently for different movies. So like this movie isn't the worst movie I've seen this year, right?
Mhm.
And it's not. I think it does rank below like below a lot of films, but the way that I talk about movies where it's like, I mean, like I'm not gonna stop you from watching this movie,
Well,
you know.
yeah.
And I'm not
Let
gonna
me
tell you not. Like if you ask me, Anthony, should I go watch Thor: Love and Thunder? I'm like, I mean, I don't like it, but you can go watch
Here's a
it.
question for you then, right? So,
Yeah.
would you say out of Marvel Phase 4, is this the better movie or property that have come out of the Phase 4
I'd
products?
say no.
Okay.
But we have drastically different opinions on Phase 4,
Yeah.
and I'll say why. Because you say the one I want to say that the one you said was the worst was Eternals, correct?
Yes.
And I would argue that that one is among the best that they had for this phase.
That's fair. But
And I would say this was among the worst. And you would say this was among the best.
yeah, well, that's fine. And to like go back to just real quick to like Christian Bale's performances, right?
Yeah.
Like as much as I had an idea of where it could go and what I would have liked to see, after I got over that, I just enjoyed seeing a person just ham it up and have fun with his character character, even though it was over the top and silly. Kind of like watching William Dafoe just have fun with Green Goblin, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like there's enjoyment there. That's like really cool. Christian Bale in the Marvel movies, like something I never thought I'd see.
Yeah, me either. And like to speak about the performance of the other actors and actresses in this movie, like I'm surprised they went with the love story for Jane Foster, Natalie Portman's character. Again, considering that was probably what I initially thought was an issue in the way that they handled that in the previous movies that made her walk away from it, among other factors. And it's kind of a shame that she seems to have died in at the end of this movie, even though it's hard to say if death is ever really permanent in superhero movies, right? Because characters can always come back. But yeah, I would
Just
I
entirely upend the endings of films.
yeah, I guess after I got over my initial like disappointment that the title and the mantle of Thor isn't going to be passed on to Jane Foster and Mighty Thor, I was like, well, I guess it is what it is, and I enjoyed Natalie Portman's performances as the Mighty Thor in this movie. I think she was having a lot of fun in her role and bouncing off Chris Hemsworth and the other characters.
I thought that she was fine. I think all the people other than Christian, I don't think anybody's like of worthy of note other than Christian Bale in regards to their performances. Chris Hemsworth is, he lives this character pretty much.
Yeah, he is as Iron Man is to Robert Downey Jr. Chris Hemsworth is Thor in like
Yeah.
my head now. You know,
there's like certain castings that are like absolutely perfect, and I think I would argue that that's one of them. But I'm not going to be like, oh man, like Chris Hemsworth had a great performance in this one. Arguably, I'd argue this is actually one of his weaker Thor performances, but that has everything to do with the script and what it asked him to do, and or his improv. But like, I wouldn't. Yeah, I think the Jane Foster stuff is interesting. They finally gave Natalie Portman a little bit of weight. We're talking about like story points that I wish would have happened. I knew that Jane was going to die.
I mean, yeah,
Like Natalie Portman doesn't want to be in the MCU. Big tie up. They're gonna kill her. I knew that.
yeah, and I mean, I totally understand her coming back for this one-off movie, and they didn't really say that they were going to continue it, right? It's just the idea of a female Thor is great. I would love to see that and be a prominent thing in the rest of these franchise movies that were eventually going to come out. So it's just kind of like, well, I mean, I still have Valkyrie. She's dope. I love Tessa Thompson, and I guess I will find my fulfillment in her character.
So it's funny. I was telling my friend before the movie came out, like my headcanon for what was going to happen in the movie, right, based off of everything we've seen in the trailer. So what my thing was that was going to happen in the movie was that we were going to get like the basic Thor, Mighty Thor plot that we got, the gore plot that we got, but the way it was going to end was Jane Foster was going to die, right?
Yeah.
And then after learning all the whatever lessons that he learned at the end of the movie, Thor is like, look, I've been looking for my fulfillment in all these different places, whatever. I think I understand that what I'm looking for isn't this, and that what I wanted was with Jane, and that the movie was actually going to end with the way that it started with him burying Stormbreaker and being under the tree, and then just dying, like doing the Odin thing and turning into gold dust and dying, right? But because of his life or whatever, he was going to go to Valhalla, and then in the trailer you get there's like a whole thing where he goes, Jane?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be he was going to go to Valhalla and he was going to be in this big battle because Valhalla is not necessarily like a peaceful heaven place. It's more of like endless battle and beer, right, or fun. And so he was going to be in it, and Jane was going to be there, and he was going to be excited to see Jane after she had died,
right,
and he had died, because then they could be together, and it was going to like tie up the whole love thing. And then Tessa Thompson was gonna Valkyrie was gonna become the new Thor.
Yeah, which would have been cool,
And I would have been like, it ties it together. She melted down the lightning bolt. She fuses Mjolnir together, gets some cool gold accents. She becomes Thor with the power of Zeus. She becomes dope, and we get to have a Thor moving forward. Our Thor has finished his arc and is happy. Natalie Portman never has to come back.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was my headcanon going in, and I was like, I know they're not going to do that, but it would be such a fulfilling arc to me.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been good. And, considering where these movies could go, they could just easily go to Valhalla later, and Natalie Portman's character could return just as easily as Idris Elba's character could return, like no one is off the table anymore, and that's fine.
I hate it.
I don't mind if other characters come back, because after you kind of accept that death is inconsequential, then it's just like, all right, let's just see where this goes. Like, yeah, there's plenty of things we can be like, oh yeah, I wish death was permanent, or I wish characters or actors weren't squandered in
I
roles.
wish death was a lady.
Yeah, but whatever. And I gotta say, like, to finish, I guess, talking about like highlights of actors' performances and stuff.
Yeah.
I enjoy seeing Russell Crowe just also have fun, kind of like Christian Bale did, and just to be over the top and campy and
Hammed it up.
yeah, just hamming it all up, going for an accent that I just can't even place.
I think they said it was like he was doing an accent from like a Australian skit show of like a Greek character. So he was doing a version of a joke version of a Greek accent.
Yeah, I liked it. And I guess to just tie up this conversation about actors' performances, that post-credit scene where we get to see the actor who they chose to play Hercules, that was really fun. Who knows what they're going to do with Hercules, or if they're ever going to follow a plot line. I don't think Thor 5 is set to be involving Hercules. I think they just kind of are like, hey, here's Hercules. But I like the actor they chose for it, the man from Ted Lasso, you know?
So I've never watched Ted Lasso. I couldn't recognize the actor with the 2 seconds of screen time that they gave him.
Yeah.
Because they literally were like, I think the line was like, yes, father. And then they cut to black like, immediately.
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't even see his face.
Oh yeah, no,
He showed up when he was done.
I pegged it immediately. I completely got it. It's Brett Goldstein. He plays Roy Kent in Ted Lasso.
Okay.
A great show, fun. The actor is good at being a pissed off guy. You know, like his character in that show is pissed off footballer, you know, guy who swears unnecessarily too much, but also has a warm heart because he has a really close connection with his niece.
I don't know anything about him to be excited. I don't like the idea that they're setting up something that they're never going to fulfill on, like they do with every Thor movie.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't talk about this. I didn't like the fact that the actors came back and Melissa McCarthy was Hela. I thought that was really bad, and they went on for way too long.
I thought that was hilarious, and I was laughing my ass off when they chose Melissa McCarthy to be Hela in that dumb play.
I feel like that's so lazy. It's like the most obvious choice.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it was so dumb. But I didn't like those plays that they played last time.
Really?
Yeah, and this time it worked for me, man. I was like, okay, you guys are doing this. It's dumb, it's fun, and you chose an obvious pick. Yeah, all right, I like it. It's so funny and.
I mean, I hate that every time we talk about Marvel properties is about how much I don't like it. Actually, that's not true. I did say that I thought Miss Marvel was cute.
Yeah.
Miss Marvel is cute. I love Miss Marvel. She's great.
Yeah.
I love the actress who plays Miss Marvel.
Mhm.
I want to see her in so many things. Brie Larson looks like she's going to get good direction because she's a phenomenal actress, and I wanted her to do so much better in Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Super excited for the Marvels.
She's had some phenomenal roles. And, you know, I guess to kind of just finish this conversation about Thor 4, I think it was kind of interesting the choices they made in exploring the ideas of like religion and gods and
then not following up on any of it.
Yeah, it's just like I understand they didn't. This wasn't that movie to do that. I wish it was.
Don't make Gore the bad guy. Then that's my.
But like, it's just kind of like examining the choices they made is interesting. You know, the choice to not to show, maybe it's due to time constraints, money, or something. Any gods of
being butchered.
Yeah, being butchered. Any peaceful or benevolent gods that actively help the people. The idea of Gore kind of like awaken to the corruption of gods, or realizing that gods aren't, you know, like divine helpers of the civilizations is kind of interesting, specifically because like if Gore represents a devout follower of a faith from a time before, I don't know, our current modern society, like they didn't really show his culture, but I got the impression that it was just a more ancient religious following of ancient type of people, right? Compared to our modern society, right? And they gave him the perspective of a modern person's realization of gods, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting seeing like, oh, look, they chose to give Gore kind of this realization of this thought pattern of like a modern day person, not like a devout follower who understands that the gods aren't necessarily beneficial to their civilization from the beginning, you know? Or like
Yeah.
the idea of arriving on this planet full of gods of all various kinds of cultures and
How
stuff.
much that like absolutely ruins your worldview
Yeah,
if you're like a monotheistic religion.
right. And or also the fact that seemingly everyone loves Zeus.
Yeah.
There's no people that say or oppose anything Zeus says. There's no like conflict in this meeting, which I guess is supposed to be a planet where the gods go to have fun. But no one is like, whoa, 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 Zeus, hold on. You could appreciate your sacrifices, but we don't roll that way. That's not us, you know? I'm cool with the orgy, but not this, you know, like there's not enough of like
I guess that the whole purpose of the Zeus thing was like, and the god sphere whatever section was like to prove that they were not great.
yeah, which is I
But
mean,
like at the same time, I was like, I feel like this doesn't work for that.
yeah,
Especially because yeah, you're right. Like it doesn't add any like level of nuance to it.
no, no. And if anything, like they don't really do anything with that. It's just kind of like I understand it's a vehicle to show and give Russell Crowe his performance as Zeus and show how the
Yeah.
gods are just flawed and not worthy of savior and stuff. But like there's no like interesting, even little just interactions between gods and each other, the people in the scene or anything. They're just there. They all
dressed
seems to love Zeus and they're just set dressing and it's just kind of a shame because like the Marvel universe has such an interesting cosmology, right? Like there's gods above gods above gods above gods above gods, and it's so interesting to explore and read about it. And they do nothing
Yeah,
with
they're
it.
like, there's celestials there. What does that mean? I just watched the Eternals. Like, imagine if the Eternals had to deal with gore. Like that would have been kind of cool.
Oh yeah, maybe that would have been, I don't know, a perfect villain for the
For, for the Eternals? Oh man.
Oh, let's see. What Gore think of a bunch of gods meddling in the DNA of other civilizations, you know, as experiments?
Oh my god. When one of the big plot points of that movie is the Eternals realizing that the god they worshipped was like a terrible being of immense power that like was manipulating them the whole time. Who better than freaking Gore to show up and be like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I know this goes into the territory of like fan fiction and like fan talking.
Oh yeah, I mean it's Marvel, they could cross over, it's
Yeah,
fine.
but like if I were to make this Phase 4 franchise with all the hindsight I have of watching all these Marvel movies already and the shows and everything, it would have been a great thing to develop two major villains for this entire phase where you have Kang. Yeah, if you had Kang as the seeming final villain of this entire phase, and he's like this unstoppable threat that rivals Thanos, and then quietly in the background, you're building the villain of Gore and how he's just kind of like wiping all these gods out. And then you have this person who presents themselves as like the most intelligent and manipulative god that controls all the timelines of the multiverse. What a perfect way to build an interesting villain slash anti-hero, a guy that murders all the gods for this insane quest, but ultimately you want to win because you want Kang to be defeated, you know?
That would actually, that's why I was like, the problem with, like, again, we talk about the Phase 4 problem, is like, it feels listless because, like, there's so many interesting things, and, like, I don't need it to be end game level intrigue, right? Like, of, like, build up and sagas and all that stuff. It's more of, like, use the characters you have to their fullest.
Yeah.
And, like, develop them and, like, allow them to be the characters that they are, the reason you're using them is because they're good characters.
Yeah.
So use them as good characters.
Yeah. So it's interesting the choices they made in this movie, the choices they didn't. I wish this was a different movie, but I'm happy with the movie they gave me. It was entertaining. I really enjoyed the choices and the risks they took. It didn't always work out. Some of the moments fell a little flat. There was plot holes created for other movies unintentionally in this movie, like the whole eternity thing where, oh, if you can find the altar of eternity, you get one wish. Presenting the idea of a wish kind of renders some of the like stakes of previous movies a little mute because it's like, you know, in comparison to like, I don't know, the Infinity Gauntlet, it feels like, oh, if Thanos was seeking the Infinity Gems or stones and wanted to enact his plan to, probably would have come across this avenue as well.
Seeing how Stormbreaker was made by the guy who made the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's like, hey, dude, I want you to make this Infinity Gauntlet. And it's like, I guess he hid the fact that Stormbreaker is the key to eternity.
Yeah, yeah. Or the introducing the concept of a wish that grants anything makes storylines kind of complicated. But
Yeah.
all that being said, after listening to probably all my complaints, I still like this movie and appreciate the risk they took. It all didn't work out, but like I still liked it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's ultimately all that matters. Like, I don't like this movie for all the reasons I've listed. I think a lot of people try to dismiss the critiques people have for one reason or another. Like, hey, you know what? If you enjoy this movie, that's fine. You don't have to agree with my critiques of it. You don't have to care about my critiques of it, but understand that I have critiques of it, and that's why I don't enjoy
Yeah,
it.
I mean, part of it is that, like, even as this podcast is a thing, like, it's a fun hobby. I love it. I love talking about movies and stuff. But
Yeah.
part of the reason I wanted to make this is I like talking about movies. I want to be better at critiquing movies and being able to explain why I like something despite it possibly not being good.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of value in practicing critique and being able to speak about why you're passionate about a movie. And sometimes you end up liking a movie and sometimes you don't. And it's refreshing to hear someone's opinion that doesn't exactly match with your opinion, right?
Yeah, because again, these two movies that we've talked about, like you liked RRR, but I like RRR significant. I feel like significantly more.
No, I think that's fair to say, and that's great.
That's fair, yeah. And then but we both can like I think that's why it's great to talk about movies is like you can articulate why, and sometimes people can't. And it's not saying that that's not okay. It's more saying that I want to be able to do it well because it makes it worth it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I like this movie. It's like, but like, why did I like this movie?
Mhm.
Like, what makes it fulfilling to me? Why does this movie fulfill me as opposed to this movie? Or why does this movie not fulfill me as
Mhm.
compared to that movie? And I think it's interesting to find out why that's for some people. And some people, they're not interested in that conversation, and I get that. But, for me, it's cool hearing you like talk about your critiques about Thor, but then also be like, but ultimately that stuff doesn't matter because I like these things about it.
Yeah.
Right. And why I still critique heavily the third act of RRR, but I'll still love that movie because of everything that came before it. And so like moving forward we'll still talk about these movies, still talk about like why they're all great and stuff. There's always going to be more Marvel movies coming up. What is the next one? Is it Black Panther?
I can probably look that up. Hold on.
Ant-Man or Black Panther? I'm not excited for Ant-Man. Black Panther at least has Namor.
Yeah, Marvel properties coming up that is specifically a movie. I think it's going to be Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Okay.
And looking at this list I just pulled up, yes, it is. It's Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, followed by Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and then movies that may or may not change or be pushed called The Marvels.
Oh yeah, that's the one that is definitely coming out because they already teased it at the end of Miss Marvel.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I didn't know that. Awesome. I think that's probably a good place to call this one. Let us know if you enjoyed Thor 4 or have you seen RRR and enjoyed that movie. Leave us a comment. We'll respond to them. We don't get them as much as I would hope, but that's fine, Just when we see them, we'll try to respond or at least like it or heart it or whatever. Check the.
I like when people say stuff of like in response to like ideas that we present. It doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, it's just like, this is very cool. I appreciate those comments, and I think that I am cool. But I also want your thoughts and your opinions on things and whether or not you think otherwise.
Yeah, maybe we should make a email for people to send in their thoughts at some point. I know some other podcasts do it. But it might be a fun way to see if we get any people wanting to share their opinions.
Yeah, we'll open a PO box. You guys can send us stuff. We won't do unboxings, but we'll open it anyway.
See, I was just thinking of making an email kind of like, I don't know, just pick something pod mailbag or something,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or like Marvel has the author notes at the back. where they respond to mail that's sent to them. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, letters to the editor kind of stuff.
Letters page. Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, thank you for listening to this episode of the Just Pick Something podcast. Let us know if you have any thoughts or opinions about Thor 4 podcast episode. The intro and outro song to this podcast is VHS Dreams by Sean Ivers. Link in the description as usual, and link in the description for everything else. Thanks for listening, and until next time.